Intelligence is one aspect which is not much shared, not talked about.
Yes.
If you share the intelligence, it doesn't remain intelligence anymore. From a Bollywood movie, drones are coming and dropping weapons. People are coming through the tunnel, but that is happening, and they are being caught also. 1 kg of drug which is supplied from Pakistan into India costs few thousand rupees, but when it moves out of India, it is few lakh, and when it moves into international market, it is few lakh dollars. They say that nothing has happened. They have just killed a crow and 2 trees. They have felt the entire operation of Air Force was just this much. Then why did they take the reporters after 42 days?
Hello and welcome to Dev Talks. I have a very, very special guest with me today, someone from the shadows, Major General Amitabh Joshi, VSM. The general who retired as the Additional Director General of the Military Intelligence in the Ministry of Defense has extensive experience in counterintelligence and monitoring internal security situation of the country. He was instrumental in establishing an effective system to ensure security of information and personnel, which also included the domain of cybersecurity. Thank you, sir, for joining me today and sharing your thoughts and understanding and helping us understand the world of military intelligence.
Thank you, Adi. And thank you for the nice words that you have spoken.
Thank you. So, to a layman like myself, intelligence is basically the art of gathering information on one's adversary to better plan for the opposition coming up in front of us. I'd like us in this discussion to better understand the aspect of military intelligence, because when somebody says intelligence, what comes into mind is spy game and this and that. I'm sure there's a lot else that goes behind the scenes. So, for the first question, what is military intelligence and how is it different from the civilian intelligence agencies that we see around us?
Well, before we talk about military intelligence, let's understand what is intelligence first. And a layman, a general person, thinks information and intelligence are both like similar words, or they mean the same kind of understanding they have about the two words. But there is a vast difference between information and intelligence. Information is a piece of input, any kind of information that this is going to happen is a information. Many pieces of information may be related, may not be related. All that information is collected. Then it is collated, analyzed, synthesized, and then a meaningful aspect comes out of that many pieces of information, and that which is precise, concise, to the place, to the time, to the person, is what becomes intelligence. So any piece of information, like tomorrow, it may rain tomorrow. Is it information or is it intelligence? It is information. Now you collect more data on that. What time will it rain? What will be the intensity of rain? Where exactly will it rain? Will it rain in Mysore or will it rain in Delhi? This is the piece of intelligence. Then it becomes intelligence. So this was the aspect about information and intelligence. Well, information and intelligence both have been part of parcel of the humankind right from the very beginning of our race, or ever since the world existed. If you take back your mind to our own Hindu scriptures, mythology, and our way of scriptures, you see, the oldest we say is Ramayana. I'll not talk about Ved and Puran. Talk about Ramayana, where the things were happening, or it was the story of a particular king. When all that, when war took place between Ram and Ravan, it was in what was most important? Intelligence. And how was it collected? Hanuman was sent. Vibhishan was asked to come over and give intelligence about what is happening in Sri Lanka, or that time Lanka and Ravan how was it, what was his army. All that information, intelligence, everything was collected, synthesized, analyzed, and then the war was waged. It did not happen on its own suddenly. Similarly, in Mahabharat days, the epic battle of Mahabharat, why did Pandav win over Kauravas? Is it only because of their bravado? Or is it because of the superior intelligence network of Sri Krishna, which at every stage and every point in time, every piece of battle, whenever they were against any Maharathi, he knew how to defeat that Maharathi. And individually, one after the other, they started killing the superheroes, the super Maharathis of Kaurav army, all because of the superior intelligence available to Pandavas. Do you agree? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
If you analyze, this is how it comes out to be. So intelligence is that important. You take any war in the world today, in last 200 years, you will see, if you study those wars, the singular factor of winning or losing that particular war was intelligence. A larger army got defeated because they did not have the correct, precise intelligence.
Correct.
Why did Shivaji Maharaj adopted and Maharana Pratap adopted that art of guerrilla warfare? Strike enemy without any warning, surprise enemy, and thereby defeat enemy. So the intelligence was available to Maharana Pratap and Shivaji, while it was not available to Aurangzeb and Akbar. That is how they lost those battles or skirmishes. So this is how the historical perspective of intelligence I was trying to explain. What is the importance of intelligence as we talk about today? Now coming on to aspect of civil intelligence collection and military intelligence collection. I'll talk about military intelligence collection a little later. First, we will talk about in our day-to-day life, which you can connect better. In corporate world, in any kind of business, in any kind of work that we do, not only business, in our personal life. You want to get married, you collect information about the spouse, would-be spouse. If you are a male, you collect about the girl that you want to marry. You collect information, then you convert it into intelligence, how it is. And then you say, okay, I would like to meet that girl now, and then go ahead and see. Similarly, you are going in for a business, so you collect all kind of information. How will what is a demand of this particular product? Which all places will this demand be? How much, what is the season of demand when it goes up, comes down? Reasons. Is this product available in the market somewhere else? What is the rate? So you have to keep the rate competitive. What is the quality? You have to keep the quality competitive. All that is pieces of information converted into intelligence at certain point of time and then applied it to your product. And that is how you will have a superior product, or a product which will, your business will improve, or it will establish. So in any walk of field, in any walk of life, we see information is what is very important. And if it is converted into intelligence, that becomes the winning aspect of it. Today, the pandemic issue of drugs, what is happening is drugs. Now you are aware, any and all drugs are manufactured by various companies, but do they give the formula? What is their intelligence aspect? The formula of that particular drug.
Yes.
Today we are talking about vaccination. Many countries have come out. There are 7 different countries have come out with vaccines about COVID-19. Each has got its own formula. So what is important is that formula. If you get that input or information about that, what is this all about and how it is made, you will make the vaccine. You will not have to do R&D. Certain countries are doing the same. We know China is only doing is also doing R&D. I'm not saying they are not doing R&D, but they are also trying to gain formulas, information, intelligence about various aspects, whether it's happening in US, Europe, Germany, or in other India or in any other country. So they are collecting that information, converting into intelligence, and trying to use it for military purposes. So that becomes military intelligence. But that doesn't mean that information is only generated from the aspects of military. It may have been generated from the aspects or from the fields of civilian field, as we call it.
Okay.
So now you understand what is the aspect of intelligence in civil parlance and how it becomes from there, how does it get converted into military intelligence. Now, when we say about which are those agencies which are involved in intelligence or dealing in intelligence, well, in any country there are aspects of internal aspect where within the country things are looked at, and aspects which are outside the country, which we see the neighboring countries or the adversary countries. So these are the two differences. One, when you collect intelligence for management within your country, and another is when you collect intelligence for keeping your own country safe from the adversaries, say any kind of misadventure that adversary may try. The domain of collecting intelligence of adversaries' army or defense forces or their defense preparedness is the domain of military intelligence. There are various methods how to collect that intelligence. I will not go into those details. There is an organization which collects intelligence of our adversaries. It is RNAW, as we all know. Then that is the topmost agency. Then comes the military intelligence. There is the Air Force intelligence. There is naval intelligence. All the three wings of defense forces have their own intelligence network, which they collect intelligence about their adversaries. Now, adversaries, when we talk about, well, we know what our neighbors are, and for all our neighbors and not so close neighbors also, one has to keep collecting intelligence. It's not a process. It is not on and off process that today you start collecting intelligence, tomorrow you don't want. But it is a long drawn process which goes for years together, and then you keep collecting pieces of information, keep converting into intelligence. That's how your database is collected. That's how you get to understand what that country is up to, what were they doing earlier, what they are up to now, and what are they going to do in future. After all, it is a aspect of nation. Today they are today two nations are friends. They may not be friendly after 10 years.
Correct.
So we have to collect information about each and every country which is in the vicinity, and even which are not very close neighbors. Also, intelligence of those countries also is collected. This is the sole job of RNAW, military intelligence, and there is a big organization within military intelligence who is working 24/7 for this 365 days for aspect of collecting intelligence. So this is how and as we talk about civilian, well, there is civilian intelligence agencies are IB, CBI, SIB, police intelligence, NIA, DIA, revenue intelligence, tax intelligence. So for various departments, for collecting intelligence of their functioning, how their things are moving, there are departmental intelligence and there is national level intelligence. National level intelligence is mostly IB, CBI, NIA, DIA. These kind of agencies are the ones which are running for the entire, or you can say center is running those agencies. And this information is all collected and disseminated to various agencies. It is not that it is only kept to that. There is a good amount of amalgamation of information takes place, and it is distributed to all the need to know basis. Of course, it is not given to anybody and everybody, but wherever it is required, it is shared, and then information is converted into intelligence, and then that intelligence is presented to the superior authorities, to the NSA, to the PMO, and things like that. This is how the information is collected, and then people up the chain are informed, and daily, weekly briefings take place. And in those briefings, the superior authorities are informed about various aspects: what is happening in Northeast, what is happening in Naxalite areas, what is happening in JNK, what is happening on terrorist front, what is happening on ISIS front, what is happening in within, if any such likely terrorist movement activity or extremist activities taking place. All that intelligence is aspect of security is covered in this manner, and that is how it is percolated down and also upwards. I hope I have been able
that's
to
a
answer.
very, very interesting way that you put it across. And what really comes out of a conversation is that nations do whatever they do is to protect their own national interests at the end of it. Everybody is trying to protect himself or ensure that there is no harm to itself and its citizens and its businesses. So I guess,
Without doubt.
Yeah, and I mean the example that you shared about a man wanting to get married to a woman and collecting information, or vice versa for that matter. I'm not trying to be a sexist in any way, but it is we are also doing some sort of information gathering, collecting it into intelligence by joining the dots. I think that's one thing that comes out very, very clearly with your answer. It's intelligence, or this thing seems to be a piece of a information in intelligence would be a piece of a puzzle, and only experts would be able to decipher it. Interesting, sir.
Yes, absolutely.
Very interesting, sir. It is also, I'd also like to say that it is a part of our daily life, not just in India but abroad as well. And I mean, I don't think a lot of the citizens or excuse me, anybody would actually put a two heed about this particular thing unless something really big happens. We saw an example of good Indian intelligence at the time of the surgical strikes that took place. I mean, let's not forget, we had the information. That's why we went and hit them the way we did. So, looking at the threats that we face today, do you think we are completely prepared to face our adversary, especially on both the fronts? And I'm just talking about general preparedness. I think a lot of the citizens keep worrying about ever-growing capabilities of our neighbors.
You see, this is one aspect because intelligence is one aspect which is not much shared, not talked about.
Yes.
If you share the intelligence, it doesn't remain intelligence anymore. So people have this, earlier also people asked me, are we prepared? So I'll divide this question in two parts. Firstly, as we all are aware, India is such a large country with huge and very extensive borders. All kinds of terrains are there, with desert, high altitude, super high altitude, more than 20,000 feet, glaciated, avalanches are coming, jungle terrain. It's like Amazonian forest kind of a terrain where it is total slush and very high trees, something like 30-40 feet high trees, thick vegetation. You name it, and the kind of terrain is available on Indian borders.
Correct.
So first, let's understand that what is the total borders that we have. Before we move on to land borders, let's also talk about coastal areas. You'll be surprised to know that the coastline of India is as large as 7,500 plus kilometers. And there is something called EEZ, exclusive economic zone of a country on which that country has the total right on that particular area of sea, which is on the coastal areas. It is 23 lakh plus kilometers. The numbers are mind-boggling. Now it is job of Coast Guard and Indian Navy to keep this area safe and also patrol. To keep that safe, they have to patrol that area.
Correct.
You have to be either electronically or physical eye has to be there. Some kind of a surveillance activity has to take place in this entire 7,500 plus kilometers and 23 lakh square kilometers of area. So if you take back your mind to the Bombay attack, people say, how can the boat come in? Oh, it's an Indian Ocean. The boat has come in. It's a small boat. It can always come in, yes, but we have learned our lessons from there. Today, there is a capability of Indian Navy and Coast Guard put together where they have knowledge of which boat is moving where at any given point in time. It is phenomenal. It is not available to many countries in the world. Even advanced countries do not have such kind of infrastructure available to them. It is like to explain how this works is like normally your four-wheeler. Now in the current what Mr. Gadkari has said that everybody will have his number plate and which will be coded electronically, and that it is you will be linked, your car number would be linked to the owner, and that is how at any given point in time, anywhere that car is there, you can understand who is the owner and where that this car belongs to. And he has also said that in due course of time, tolls will be out, and because your numbers are already by then India and all the cars in the country would have got tagged, so they will know which car is moving in which road and they will cut the tax of the road, toll tax, so that there are no toll taxes required. The similar kind of technology has been applied here. Each boat has been given a specific number and a specific tag which they have to say, and that is how they can monitor which boat is moving there. So this is the aspect of coastal security, or how the information is gathered in coastal belt of India. Now moving on to the land borders. Largest is with Bangladesh, which is almost 4,100 kilometers. Then comes China, 3,500 approx kilometers. Then comes Pakistan, 3,323 kilometers. Myanmar, Nepal, Bhutan. So we have borders with 6 countries. And let me tell you, we all know most of the countries are not very friendly towards India. Some are openly having animosity. Others are under the guile, like Myanmar. There are terrorist groups which are there and they move in and out of Myanmar and India border. They are safe havens in Myanmar. Earlier they were in Bhutan also and in Nepal also, which India has been able to control. And now those borders are relatively secure. But still, one has to, again, the point comes, how do you keep the border secure? By having some kind of a surveillance, either electronic or satellite, through drones, or through physical presence. One or the method has to be applied to understand what is happening at a particular border. And I have already explained what kind of terrain is there in these borders. It is not a plain ground that you can see somebody moving. So keeping this aspect in mind, amount of phenomenal work has to go in, and many agencies or forces are working 24/7 on these borders like ITBP, BSF, Army, and others also, who are collecting information, collecting intelligence, and doing surveillance on these borders and keeping our borders safe. But you are well aware what our adversaries are and what kind of effort they do. Now they are digging tunnels and then sending terrorists inside, or they are sending weapons through drones. Why they are doing it? Because the security has been tightened on the border. That is why they have to do all these kind of things, which look like from a Bollywood movie. Drones are coming and dropping weapons. People are coming through the tunnel, but that is happening, and they are being caught also. So that proves the point that things are happening, but then forces are here. The intelligence machinery is there to take charge and take control of these things, and they are one step ahead of the adversary to counter their whatever nefarious designs that they have towards our country. So if we talk about only the borders and coastal areas, I think I have covered it. And now we move on to the aspects of internal threats, as I said earlier, external and internal. Again, India's vast population, diversity is there. The Britishers, when they left, two-nation theory they applied, and they have succeeded in that. The thorn is there in our feet. India has never been able to be peaceful and progressive. Just because one country is trying to put you down, they can't do themselves, but they will not allow other country also to flourish. We have fought more than 5 full-fledged wars and other skirmishes, which we are aware: 47, 62, 65, 71, 99, and then other skirmishes on borders, smaller ones. So this two-nation theory has worked as far as British were concerned. Their aim was that India should not be peaceful and progressive. So they are achieved their aim partially. Notwithstanding that, India is still moving ahead, all guns blazing, and we are there today, one of the very robust nations with good democracy and with better facilities and infrastructure than many countries. Point comes about our diversity and the political issues which our country has, the vote bank politics that is going on, the sectarian divide, the ethnic divide, linguistic divide, and based on that, political parties, they collect votes. So these are the issues which are internal, and we are dealing with it. Third major issue is the drugs. We are sitting in the golden triangle crescent, as they say. That crescent is Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. And the drugs are coming in from Afghanistan, which is no man's country, I would say. Sometime Northern Alliance is ruling it, sometime Taliban is ruling it, but most of the time Pakistan has got a fair share in the ruling party, and 90% of the rule is Pakistan only, whichever government may be running it. The drugs are coming from Iran, Afghanistan, into Pakistan, into India, and then moving into international countries, in international market. And this is a very big cartel, and big money flows in here. The drug which is the 1 kg of drug which is supplied from Pakistan into India costs few thousand rupees, but when it moves out of India, it is few lakh, and when it moves into international market, it is few lakh dollars per kg. Then is the terrorism, which we have been forced upon by our adversary Pakistan, the jihadi terrorism, and various kind of from 1998 onwards, they have been following this bleed through many cuts and things like that policy of Zia-ul-Haq. And we are facing that also, and we have partially won it to quite an extent. 90% battle is won. And then is the extremism, what is happening in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and areas where we have this Naxalite movement, and they are Sulva Judam movement and things like that. So that's again a political aspect, and our central government, state governments, central military forces, or paramilitary forces are having good intelligence network, and they are doing operations. Sometimes those operations are successful, sometimes they are not. So that's a part and parcel of the game. You will lose some, you will win some. So that is how the internal threats are looked at, and there is a full-fledged mechanism. There are full-fledged departments. There are full-fledged forces who are looking at these things and working on them. Many people will not know because it is not their concern to know. But when you get on with it, you will get to know, okay, these things are happening and these things are working on ground. Now, are we prepared? Yes, we are prepared. Last point which you said, are we prepared? Yes, we are safe, we are prepared. With all these issues and I would say the pullbacks, still India is moving forward. Per capita income has increased, infrastructure has increased. The Indian standing in international arena has risen manifold. Even in such a pandemic, India has come out a better country. India has come out as a country which can look after itself and can do many things with less availability of resources, but still we have been able to manage ourselves. If we talk about only the war, well, other than 1962 war, the 5 wars that India has fought, India has won, whether it is with China or it is with Pakistan, and won them comprehensively. There is no parallel in the history of world where more than 95,000 soldiers were captured live. Some people were not able to encash that particular aspect and could not win that particular point over the adversary. That's a separate issue.
Yes.
But as far as defense forces are concerned, as far as military is concerned, the defense had given that opportunity to the country wherein they had a best bargaining chip possible in the world. So India has won comprehensively all the wars. India has won terrorism. Now, if you see, the terrorism is on ebbing low because of the policies of the government and because of the work done by the security forces. So I would say that we are very much there. We are well prepared, and everything is going within the control of security forces and intelligence.
That is very reassuring to know, sir. I think one of the things that you brought out, which is it's very, very interesting, is the factor that there are so many issues that a country faces, which either one of them gone out of control can actually disbalance the entire situation. I mean, you mentioned terrorism, you mentioned drugs, you mentioned all sorts of elements around the place, and I think any one of these things gone out of balance would create a lot of trouble because instability and everything. I wonder if you would agree with me, sir.
Yes, absolutely correct. You see, many nations, other nations have not been able to do so. No?
Yeah.
You see certain countries, I will not name them, but if you see the larger countries in the world, how many countries have come up in just mere 70, 75 years? The way India has. Indian digitization today is best in the world.
Correct.
The amount of bank accounts that are connected to individuals electronically is nowhere parallel in the world, not even in US. I will not about European countries. They are too small a country. They are too small countries. Their population is less than our states. So India is such a large country. Despite that, despite all this, India has progressed phenomenally, and we should take pride in that.
I agree with you. So, and as a matter of fact, another thing that was brought out very, very well, of course, the sources were not brought out, was the destruction of that boat that was caught across on the New Year's Eve
Yes.
a couple of years ago. So that's a clear example that the apparatus has actually taken a flip fold. One wonders how it was done, but at the end of it, the cake was there for the country to eat, and that is something that is very,
Yes.
very critical, sir. So there is
India has
another.
taken its lessons from the past, like what happened in Bombay. That lesson has been learned and applied. The corrections have been applied. That is why we were able to catch that.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes, sir. And this is a very small and insignificant thing. If it's a small boat in the middle of the ocean, it's quite
23 lakh square kilometers.
Yes, sir. So there's a term that we again hear. I mean, military intelligence. All right, we are able to now put a finger on what it is exactly. But there's another term that goes around. It's called counterintelligence. What is this system of counterintelligence? And we've further heard counterintelligence and so on and so forth. What is this all about?
That's a very tricky question, you see. Yeah, intelligence. You want information on me, so you'll start collecting information on me. Who am I? What is my education? Where do I belong? And things like that. I get to know that you are collecting information about me, so I start blocking that. I don't allow you to collect information on me because I do not know your intentions. So I say, okay, we will not allow this information to be taken by the X person. I'm not saying he's adversary. I'm not saying he's but we don't know. That aspect is called counterintelligence. To block the flow of own information or to negate anybody to collect information on yourself is counterintelligence. In a layman term, you when you are in a house, you latch the door.
Correct.
Because you don't want anybody to come in. Anybody or somebody, whomsoever. So here also, here the information is there. If I do not put any code or any password on my computer, anybody can access my computer and see what is there in my computer. Do I want that? Similarly, in every department, in what is being done in Army, what is being done in Air Force, that information you don't want to be known to anybody, even on public. It is only need to know. Those who need to know will know it, but others should not know it. An adversary, of course, should not know it. So that aspect of denying the piece of it, I'll not say denying, not allowing to collect the information is counterintelligence. Now you will apply some countermeasure to this countermeasure of mine. Is counterintelligence. So it is basically the game of countering each other. It is one step, who is thinking one step ahead of the other. Basically that. Now for this aspect, it is easier that I just explained it in 3 sentences. But this is a whole gamut, and there is a whole amount of work which goes in to do this aspect. Now I'll explain it in the terms of, say, in the civil terms. In, say, food and beverage industry, you have developed a soft drink, let's say Coca-Cola. So you don't want that formula to be known to me. Otherwise, I'll make another cola, and maybe I will distribute it at a lesser rate, and your business rivalry is there, and you will lose the business. So you will safeguard that particular formula. Yes or no?
Correct, sir.
So this is the similar kind of way it happens in Army also, or in Defense Forces. You are from Air Force background. First check is at the gate. Sir, kindly show me your identity card. kindly show me your dependent card, whatever. Or if you are nothing, you are a guest of somebody, then somebody has to say that he is my guest, please allow him, either by written or by on phone, and that person should know who is he talking. So this is the normal way of keeping the cantonments safe. And similar way, this is applied in army so that adversary is not able to collect the information of ours. To block this, you should know what all kind of intelligence are there and how they are collected. So there are 6 types of intelligence. 1, human int, signal or communication int. Third is imagery int, that is satellite imagery. Radar imagery. So through satellite, one can spy on us and see what we are doing. Then comes the measurement intelligence or geospatial intelligence. Geospatial intelligence is collecting information about, say, a bridge or a big canal or dam, the size. If you have to destroy that particular dam, you should know what kind of dam it is, what is the thickness of its concrete walls, what kind of armament or bombing you will require to break that. You have sent a mission and it has carried a wrong kind of bombs and load, and it did send the bomb on it, but it did not destroy because the dam was more thicker than what was thought of. So that is the geospatial intelligence or the measurement intelligence. And third is, which is commonly now being used, is OS intelligence, that is open source intelligence. Open source intelligence is Outlook or India Today has published a particular article, and that it is spoken to some knowledgeable people and they have given some piece of information. Okay, how bomb is made. Now, like today, how to make a bomb is available on internet. So it is open source. Anybody can access it. So if you keep on trying, you will get the information from the OS end. That is open source intelligence. And lastly is the AI, that is artificial intelligence, which has come up very recently into the domain of intelligence in last 4 or 5 years. And that is the AI. So if we know how the intelligence is collected, we will know how to counter it. So this is why I was trying to explain what are the types of intelligence and what are the ways of collecting it, and then to counter it. So this is what the whole gamut of counterintelligence is. And in India, as far as defense is concerned, we have in Navy, we have in Air Force, and in Army, which is the largest organization of defense, having a full-fledged units, people dedicated who are only doing counterintelligence work in various units, formations, and things like
that. Amazing. So that's a very interesting story. I think one takeaway when you use the analogy of the bomb, I think a lot of minds who are going to listen to this is going to go to that satellite image that was floating around about the Balakot strikes and that building with a big hole in the roof. So the target was the people inside the building, and somebody would have actually got the intelligence. I don't know how, but somebody did get the intelligence of the thickness of the roof. How many floors is it? Where do the people sit? That's how the bomb was fused in a way, as brought out by Air Chief Marshal Dhanoa in one of his interviews. That bomb was fused with the amount of intelligence that we have in a way that it could go at a certain height into the building and
inside, and then explode.
Yeah, so I think
that is what I was talking about, measurement intelligence. That is what I was explaining, measurement intelligence. So till the time you have that measurement, so what is the thickness of roof, the penetration will not take place, correct, and the casualty will not happen.
Correct.
It would blast on the roof. The bomb may blast on the roof. So you will have the roof collapsed, building collapsed, but maybe the physical casualty may be 10, 12 people, those who were got hurt because of the collapse of the roof oblique wall. But in this case, what has happened? The roof is intact, bomb has gone inside the building and then exploded. whereby causing phenomenal amount of casualties. There is a detail which is available of more than 317 casualties, though Pakistan is denying it.
They can keep doing that. So the hole in the roof clearly signifies what really happened, and
Absolutely,
it is
they allowed.
kudos.
Yes, absolutely. They say that nothing has happened. They have just killed a crow and 2 trees. They have felled. The entire operation of Air Force was just this much. Then why did they take the reporters after 42 days? By then they had already done whatever they were to do. So if they were so true, then they should have taken people in 4 hours. This is what they have done, and this is where the place is, and nothing is there. Then you could have said, yes, possible, then this strike was not what is being talked about. But no, the first outside person other than the Pakistan military, it was after 42 days.
As a matter of fact, the place they showed were all surface explosions, which was not the kind of bomb that was used. So
no,
they're two different things. I mean, yes. it comes out pretty easily. So we talked about, not, of course, not in detail with the source or anything of that sort, about the Balakot strike and how intelligence played a role in assessing the kind of weapon that needed to be used in that particular attack. We also gave an example about the surgical strikes. I mean, our special forces needed to be told where exactly those camps were. Then only they could go in a safe way and hit it. They and everything.
Absolutely, route in, route out, everything was planned.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely agree with you. So, as an intelligence expert, when you look at various different activities, military-based activities that have happened around the world, I mean, I'll move away from India because it becomes a little more sensitive. But for you, as an expert, what were one or two major incidents that happened that you yourself said, "Wow, this is super. How have they done this? Is something." An example of really, really good intelligence. Would you like to share with us 2 examples, sir?
Certainly. You see, as I had earlier in the opening stages, I had brought out this point that no war has ever been won without intelligence. So, rather than the successful operation, I'll give you 1 or 2 operations which were not so successful. And from there, what lessons have been learned is important so that such things do not repeat. And in that, the first example that comes to my mind is 9/11, US 9/11, which has changed the course of current, say, the way world is today, and the way Western world is, and the way we look at other countries in the West, in the part of Southeast Asia. Was intelligence available for 9/11? Could have been averted? Yes, provided people had taken cognizance of those inputs which were provided. You see, intelligence is a very, very difficult field, and one has to be very, very mature to understand the whole thing. You will never get complete intelligence in one go. Nobody will come and tell you that, sir, tomorrow we are going to bomb the trade tower and we will hijack the plane from so-and-so airport and we will blast it into the trade tower. And well, it fell. That is a different issue that was not planned for, but it will be made to crash into the World Trade Tower. So this is the information I am giving you. This kind of information never comes. It has never come in my 37 years of service. So you have to collect pieces of information. They may not match, but as you had earlier mentioned, the jigsaw puzzle. So you keep piece by piece of information which is coming from various sources. The sources may not be connected to each other, but you have to put them across together and then draw out a picture. then understand what is likely to happen. And it is kind of predictive analysis also sometimes.
Correct. Yeah.
So I'll just bring out the factuals which are available in open source as to what happened prior to 9/11. 1998, the chief of CIA did a briefing of Mr. Clinton, the then president, in White House. Chief told Clinton, "Sir, Al-Qaeda is training people on aircrafts and they are planning to do a big attack on US using aircrafts." It's a big enough hint. It is not full intelligence, but it is a big enough piece of information. Then the Afghanistan Northern Alliance chief, who was at that time in ruling, Mr. Masood, Ahmad Shah Masood, he was in Belgium and he addressed the parliamentarians in Belgium. And that time he mentioned in his speech that time that Taliban along with Al-Qaeda are planning for a big attack on US, which is going to be a very, very big attack. And they have got educated people to do that. So these are two pieces of information. What was told to President Clinton and later on in Brussels could have been connected. The British chief, the MI6, he had the information, but he said, "It is about US. What am I going to do with it?" He passed it to the embassy and left it at that. So the ambassador was aware that something is cooking up. They were not knowing the precise aspect of it, but something is cooking up. Coming closer in 2001, on 1st May 2001, on 29th June 2001, 10 July 2001, and lastly on 6th August 2001, President and Condoleezza Rice, the then NSA of US. So they both were briefed in various briefings on these dates which I mentioned by CIA and by other agencies. So this is a intelligence only. Planes will be used. So we shall start doing something about it. But Condoleezza Rice said that I don't think you are being alarmist. This is the statement she made. And the chief said that, they are just trying to gauge what will be the US response if we send this piece of information. So this is a leaked information. They do not have the capability to do such a thing. So the point is, what I'm trying to say here is that they were too engrossed with their own selves, or they were so overconfident about themselves that they thought that this capability is beyond enemy, or that time Al-Qaeda, because that was the biggest enemy of US at that point in time. So if we shall never underestimate the enemy, and all the pieces that we get should always be taken into consideration before taking any decision. The similar thing happened in Pearl Harbor. The input was not input, it was a memo, it was in writing given to the Hawaii governor that attack is going to take place. Japan is planning a big attack on Hawaii. But it was not taken cognizance of. They said, why will they attack on US? They don't have that much of capability. They cannot take on US might, because US that time also thought they are superpower. Fine, you are superpower, but you have to be very, very careful. And if you are aware, in that on 7th December, 7:55 morning time attack, it is a daytime attack. Almost 350 aircrafts were used in 2 waves for that attack. 2,403 US soldiers got killed in that attack. And what was the loss of Japanese? 29 aircrafts. Why did it happen? Because the warning which was given was not taken cognizance of. You understand what I'm trying to say here? That is what the President Clinton and President Bush thought, that intelligence should give them when are they going to strike and which aircraft they will use. That's why 9/11 happened. And earlier on, in 1941 also they were thinking that it is not possible. They should give, but this piece of information is in writing. The naval intelligence had given this input that Japan is going to attack. Still that attack took place. So these are the issues when we say intelligence is there or not there. Well, you can always blame the intelligence because these are the people, intelligence people always move in shadow. They will never come out and say, oh, no, I told you. He'll say, shut up. Because they are, because that's how the Ind works. It'll only give it to its superior master, who are the operational people and who will act on that information. To act, not to act, or how to act, this is prerogative of some different person. Information is given by some other person. Till the time these two things match, these failures will keep taking place.
That is a hair-raising description that you just given, sir.
Yes, it is hair-raising, and issue is that these could have been avoided.
Yeah.
Now, if we say that what are you said that give example of successful operation.
Yes.
Again, I'll go to Second World War. Germany had a new kind of coding machine which they developed, or the encrypting machine which they developed, called Enigma. It was the name given to this particular system. It has had a machine on originating station. It had a machine on the receiving station. Between the two stations, it could not be decoded. It had its own algorithm, and that algorithm was till then was thought to be unbreakable or undecipherable. And that is how they were passing their secret messages from place A to B. And this was a communication network of theirs. Allied forces realized it, and they got together to break this encrypting coding machine Enigma. And the human end, the spies were put into place. The signal collection was taking place, and they were trying to decipher. So the cipher aspect of signals came into the cryptology and the cryptography, how that science were brought in, and analysts of cryptology were also brought in to understand what kind of coding is taking place. And finally, it was a German person who was involved in this, a German traitor, was given lots of money and was given various kind of things so that he could give them the piece of information. All these 3-4 things put together, and they could decode Enigma. And because of that, German U-boats could not destroy many of those Allied ships and formations, and many battles were won because Allied forces had the information where Germany is going to attack what time. And the analysts talk about, or they say that the Second World War was shortened by 2 years because of this single piece of intelligence. The Germans did not come to know that their Enigma has been broken. So this is the beautiful aspect of intelligence if you can keep it secret.
I think fantastic examples. It was done in a place called Bletchley Park, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
by Yeah, it was a. I think it's one of the most beautiful examples of code breaking that has been seen in
Yes,
recent
in the
history.
modern history,
Mm.
this is one of the best example, and which is phenomenal. So these were the successful operations then. And if we talk about now, killing of Osama bin Laden,
Mm.
successful operation based on intelligence, absolutely based on precise intelligence.
Pinpoint, yes.
Yes, killing of Zarqawi,
Mm.
again, precise intelligence. You just mentioned Balakot, our own, where our own in our own country we have done such fantastic operation, which people talk about. Even Israelis talk about that operation, that it's a good operation. It's quite Israeli type of operation.
Yeah.
Then the surgical strikes, the operations we did in Bhutan, where we went inside Bhutan, precisely killed only the terrorists which were hiding in those camps. So all it happened some time back. So it's not much talked about, but it brought down the Northeast insurgency to quite an extent.
Yes, 2015, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Bodos were there and Ulfa people were also there.
Yeah.
So these operations have been carried out and they were exceptionally successful with least amount of casualty to own forces. That is the best aspect.
Yes.
With almost nil casualty to own forces. That's the beauty of it. That is the beauty of doing a precise int operation.
Yeah. I'm sure it is also a pleasure giving such int to the operations guys. Ki boss, ye lo yaar, jaake maro isko.
The information of camp, which particular room, they did not have room. They were thatched huts and they were not cemented rooms. They were not concrete rooms, but they were earth-made rooms, earthen rooms, and with thatched roofs. Each room, what is there in room, which room is meant for storage of ammunition, which is meant for men sleeping, which is meant for cookhouse. So much so that at so and so time this person gets up and goes into the cookhouse to start his day's proceedings. He is the earliest person up in the camp. These kind of information was provided so that you can precisely time your person, that okay, when the person walks into the kitchen, he is already there to welcome him.
It's scary. Sir, for my last question, I have, you mentioned artificial intelligence in one of your answers, and I'd like to ask you, how do you think AI is going to augment or change the world of intelligence?
It's a very loaded question, I would say. It will encompass many things. What is artificial intelligence? Its name is artificial, but there is nothing artificial about it. Because of today's advancement in computing and computers, this aspect of AI has come into being. As I had earlier mentioned, there is plethora of information available. And the way world functions today, to sift that information in quick time is a challenge. Now, if you remember, just now I had said that information is available as to which boat is moving where in the sea. In your opinion, in your understanding, how many boats would be moving any given point in time in Indian Ocean or in this 7,500 plus kilometer area border of ours?
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of boats.
It is not in thousands, it is in lakhs. When fishery season is on, it is in lakhs. The number keeps on moving depending on the time, what time the fishery moves, boats move out. The 80% of world trade goes through Indian Ocean. This we are very well aware. There are 3 lakh ships moving in Indian Ocean on a monthly basis.
Wow.
So how do you keep a tab on this? If you physically start watching, okay, ye boat ka dot, this is the dot of this particular boat, and this is moving left, right, and now it has turned. It's not possible. You see, it'll take maybe 1,000 people to watch area of say 100 kilometers. So this is how where AI has come into being. Now there are algorithms, the kind of supercomputers. They are not exactly supercomputers, but very, very high capacity computers, which sift out the information. Okay, this is going on the course, it is not changed course. So they keep checking that what is the origin of this boat, what should be its previous time this boat went out and it went like this and came back like this. This information is available. So you plot the same. Okay, this boat has again got out of this area. So it should probably go in this direction into 20 kilometers into the sea and then roam around for 2 hours and then come back somewhere on the similar route. Now the boat changes its route. The AI gives you alarm. Listen, this boat is not moving as per its predictive analysis of ours. This boat should have taken this route, but it is not taken. You understand what I'm saying? So this can only be possible with AI. So this is one part of it. Coming on to the other aspect. Similarly, today, when the war is on or when at the borders, there are maybe 15 stations which are opening up and talking to somebody. They are giving their report. There are posts which are giving report to their own superiors. And similarly, so there is a lot of noise, if I may say so. In terms of SIGINT, it is called noise. Various, but in that there is one communication which has happened, which is of interest to you. To sift out that particular piece of information is a phenomenal task.
Yeah.
Again, the AI comes into play. So you feed all the information to the computer. So he says, okay, this is routine, this is routine, this is not routine. He flashes that and you examine it. So that's how AI and human intelligence and analysis comes into play. And because of these two, you can get out. The next stage of AI is when it will be able to analyze it also on its own self and give it to you in plate that, sir, this is how something is going wrong here. But that is the next stage. Today, some countries have reached, some countries have not reached that stage of AI. Similarly, satellite intelligence. Now their satellite is roaming in the orbit. So he keeps collecting photographs. If he is going over your building every day or every 2 days, so he is giving you input of your building every 2 days. Understand? Now today you have planted 3 more gamlas in your yard. Second time when the satellite comes over your house, it will show that these 3 things have come in new. It was not there last time. This is called change detection. So this information is fed in the computer that in this general area, this is the layout. When the layout changes in the next thing, it shows you the marks are there. The red marks are shown that this is how the change has taken place in this general area. It gives you point to analyze here and after what has changed. So this is how the AI works. This is how normal AI works. But as I said, some countries have gone far ahead in this aspect of AI, and that is US and Israel and China. You may be aware that China is having surveillance on all its citizens, each and every citizen. They give credit score to their citizen. If you are a law-abiding citizen, you are doing less amount of violation of rules, then you are a better citizen, and your promotion, your increment, your passport, is governed by your credit score. If your credit score is low, you will not be given passport, you will not be given visa, you will not be given loan, you will not be given various things. So this is how China is working, and this is how they have applied their AI in one aspect. Otherwise, they are doing AI in other fields also. US also is doing very high work on AI. Today, we see an example of Israel, which is happening now in Gaza, in the present war which is going on between Israel and Palestinians. They are calling it Operation Guardian of the Wall. They have named it Operation Guardian of the Wall. Israelis, and in that they have collected score of information and fed into the computer, and computers have given them precise location, predictively where this man would be after some time. Targets. And that is how they have chosen their targets with least amount of collateral damage and maximum amount of destruction of Hamas and PIJ, Palestinian Islamist Jihad people. And just now, just 2 days back, when they had killed this brigadier Issa, Basim Issa. Basim Issa of, he was the, you can say, brigade commander of the Gaza City, the senior most officer of Hamas, along with 13 more people, and along with the chief of their technology and intelligence chief, you can say, who was looking after the how to make missiles was the job of this boy, this person, and also was the intelligence chief, along with 13 people, and no civilian casualty. And they were hiding under a building. So this is the precise intelligence, and this is where AI comes into play. So AI is the future, and it is going to come up very big way in both army as well as in civil field. And in civil field, firstly, it will come into medical field, because the analysis in medicine is what is required. I mean, they'll carry out 100 x-rays of your particular part, and then AI will analyze what is wrong with this particular part. And where precisely the treatment has to take place. And the science or the technology they are developing, that the part which has got, say, let's say cancer, a particular part has got cancer, only that portion where the medicine is required, where the cancer is, medicine will be applied, no other part. Today we take generic medicine, radiology, that is for the entire body. The parts which are not having cancer, they have a very derogatory effect of that radiologic bombardment. This will be avoided. So in medical science, AI is again doing a very good job. So future is AI.
Wonderful. So this has been a wonderful talk, and at the end of it, I think I'd just like to say one thing: that the world, the world of intelligence is only known by its failures, but rarely by its successes. I'm sure the Indian intelligence has had thousands and thousands of successes that we don't know about. Someday I wish stuff is declassified so we learn the glorious work that these people have done, both civilian, military intelligence, and all other types which are there around the place. I'd like to thank you for actually taking the time out to actually discuss a very delicate subject. It's not, I'm sure it's not an easy subject for you to dwell upon because of the secrecy involved in this whole thing. But still, sir, I really appreciate your time and the way you've taken us through this entire subject, explaining us various aspects as well as with examples where it can be given, has been brilliant. I think it's a wonderful talk, and I'd like to keep this relationship open with you for another day, another topic at DevTalk, sir.
Thank you, Adi. And so nice. You had asked very intelligent questions, and I hope I have been able to give certain answers which have satisfied your quest of knowledge in this aspect.
Oh, you have, sir. You've actually lit up some more. You've actually lit up some more flames, which I'll have to start reading about. Right, sir.
Thank you.
Jai Hind, sir.
So nice of you. Jai Hind. Take care.